Let go. All right. All right. All right. In the building. In the building. Once again, letting a couple people get on. You know, as we sit here and wait. Yo, I'm glad to be back in full effect. I know I haven't seemed like I left, but due to my computer issues that I talk about all the time, I had issues. So now I got a laptop. Thanks to my wife, we back in business. So I shouldn't really have any problems with the show tonight. I think this is a topic that really, really needs to be discussed. I'm not even sure if it's been thought of in this way. And I may offend some people, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just, bringing some understanding to our table tonight. But before we get into that, man, everybody in the building, get in the building, please like and subscribe. If y'all new to the channel, please subscribe. And if y'all are back, please like the video so we can get these algorithms up, right? So before we get into anything tonight, check out the videos. I'm showing you, books. Check out my books on Amazon.com. I got a few books. And by the way, y'all, I got a new book about to drop, and it's going to drop in the next couple of days. And this is going to be dealing with religious stuff, okay? So, I'm going to get into it, though. So, let me see what y'all talking about. Well, brother, when you discuss this, I'll bring up. Okay. Oh shoot, the anti-American American. Oh, I know you into some stuff, boy. I know you saying some stuff. Before I get into all that though, I know I'm jumping ahead, but check out my books. I got the live birth certificate. If y'all are trying to understand really what birth certificate is about without necessarily all the conspiracy, y'all check out this book. And you gotta have the Moorish treaties, right? More by man, nationality, birthrights. One of my later books, Guide to Religious Marriage, Indigenous Manual for Life. If y'all got the first Moorish Treaties book, the second one has got even more in it. So check that out. Y'all need a Circle Southern Quran. I also do a book on the Canaanite connection. We're going to have to do a video on that again, but neither are there in my wake up. And then if you like to write stuff down, get this journal. It's a journal. It's a blank journal for you to write your stuff down, to write down, your dreams, write down whatever it is that you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, let's get into the video, okay? Because I hope tonight we're going to get into some stuff. Like I said, this discussion tonight, first I want to say this discussion tonight is not to offend any of my brothers, because this might offend even some Moors. You know what I mean? Like this might offend Moors and other people, because we're talking about Abrahamic religion. And a lot of people don't understand how far and how deep Abrahamic religion, how deep its claws are into society around the world. Okay. I mean, they basically, in one form or another, one of these Abrahamic religions have conquered the world and are presently ruling today. So it's important to understand that, because what I'm going to be talking about is how these Abrahamic religions have been used to basically suppress African spirituality, and how it's been used to oppress indigenous spirituality around the world. And many of us really don't see that. They don't understand that because a lot of times what we do is we'll break away from, let's say we are Christians, right? When we were born, we're Christians. So we begin to wake up. So we wake up and then we'll join Islam, or we'll join, we'll become a Rasta, or we'll become a Hebrew Israelite, or, something of those types, thinking that we're awakened and that we found something. But really what we're doing is we're in a bubble of Abrahamic religion. And so what we do is we bounce from one Abrahamic understanding to another, and that includes a lot of the Moors. And like I said, this is not a strike against Moors or anything like that, because I am a Moor. But for me to understand where the religion or the religious thought that we are under, that's what we want to look at tonight. We want to kind of look at what is our religious origins. So I got my man in the building, anti-American American. That's interesting. But it's like, this is the only one form of Islam that came from the black man. And that's very true, man. Just to touch on that, it definitely does. But when you look at it, when you look at Nation of Islam, a lot of times when they're speaking from the Quran or they're speaking from the Bible, right? Another incident is when you look at the Moorish Science Temple of America. It speaks about Islam, and it speaks about, Hebraic characters. We talk about Adam and Eve. We're talking about all these different type of people, right? So, okay, right. I'm a Shia, and the history is totally look, we're not gonna do that tonight. What you gonna do, anti-American? If you want to get some knowledge, I'm gonna show you how these Abrahamic religions, because a Shia, a Shiite, a Shia, all of Islam is going to stem out of Abrahamic religion. Okay, so we are going to look at that tonight. Okay, what we want to do is, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to look at the different things that's going on. So let's look at this. Let's get into this. I want to show something. I want to share something with y'all. Are y'all right? Like I said, people gonna jump in and out of here. They ain't gonna want to hear what I got to say. And like I said, I'm not here to offend your religious beliefs, because we honor all prophets. But as a historian, and I'm looking at things, I'm understanding some things. So let's look at this timeline of Abrahamic religions. Okay, so they say Isaiah writes, "I am the first and I am the last. Besides me, there is no God," and merges previous gods and their names into one entity. Leviticus is written and Exodus changed to combine gods. Now, that's a lot to be said right there, and I'm not going to get too far into that aspect of it. But what we're going to see is a timeline. We're looking at 1400 BCE, right? So we're talking about the Torah establishes the Jewish religion. So, we're looking at, and if you see down here, it says polytheism, because Jewish religion started out in what we call pagan tradition today. We call that pagan today. So it started out in paganism because they worship, Yahweh and Asherah, the female part. And they had those different gods. So, at some point they combined it, right? So when you get around 600 BCE, the Old Testament writers switched from polytheism to monotheism, believing in one God. Okay? So if you look and you'll see historians talk about this, they'll tell you that there was a time when, Jews kind of entertained Canaanite gods and whatnot. And then, like we said, the goddess Asherah or Asher or Astarte, that female counterpart to Yahweh begins to fade out of history, and they begin to focus just on Yahweh. And I'm not even getting into the El yet. The Hebrews at first worship El, and then they went to Yahweh, right? Because El has a feminine aspect to it. So when they started converting them over, they took those Canaanite, ideologies with them, and then not soon, but years, about 1,000 or close to 1,000 years after that, they began to let go, and they began to be monotheistic. So we got that, and then we got 4 BCE, right? So we're talking about, not even 1,000 years after the Old Testament writers begin to switch to polytheism. You've got Christianity on the scene, right? And then you've got the preachings of Muhammad that come in 610 AD. So roughly 1,000 years after the Old Testament writers switched to from polytheism to monotheism, about 1,000 years, you find Islam becoming the religion, in what we kind of know today. So my thing is this: these 3 religions are spoke about because these are Abrahamic religion. Why do I call them Abrahamic religion? Okay. The reason why is because all 3 of these entities deal with Islam. I mean, not Islam, but deal with Abraham. So if you look at, Jews believe in Abraham, it comes out of that storyline, in Genesis. And then in Genesis, which we'll talk about, but I'm just going to bring this up. But when you look in Genesis, you talk about Abraham having, Isaac and having Ishmael. Ishmael is supposed to be, the lineage going to the Arabs, or what later on now becomes Islam, right? And the Isaac becoming, the predecessors of what we call Judaism. And because Christianity is directly out of Judaism, we find that it's coming out of that. So, we got Christianity coming out of Judaism. We got Islam in some regards coming out of Judaism. And they all coming from that Middle Eastern or that Sumerian Babylonian ideology, all coming from that area. They all, at some point, the ones who are left behind as the religions are the Abrahamic religion. So this is why we got Abrahamic religion. So what we're going to do is look into that, right? We're going to look at what is the Abrahamic religion. Okay, we're going to look at that terminology. So let's look at the terminology. Okay, let's let it pop up. Let's let it pop. Okay, so we're talking about Abrahamic religion. It's saying it refers to what I said, the 3 sister monotheistic religions. So we talk about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It says that claim that the prophet Abraham, okay, so they call him the prophet Abraham. So really, the Abrahamic religion is the bigger religion of them all. It's all what they come out of, and that's based on the prophet Abraham. It says that this is their common forefather. These religions account for more than what? Half of the world's population today. So that's what I'm saying. When we look at our society today, and as we wake up, we're like, oh, we've been Christians, under slavery, we were Christians in America and in South America. And as they wake up and say, oh, okay, we want to become free, they tend to go to one of these other Abrahamic religions. They either become Islamic or they become a Judaism. Or like when I say Judaism, we're talking about like Orthodox Judaism, or perhaps, or we're talking about even like Hebrew Israelite as an offshoot or coming out of derivative kind of out of Judaism. Okay, so these religions we go to are still part of that same one. It says the prophet Abraham is claimed by the Jew as an ancestor of the Israelites. And like I said, while his son Ishmael is seen in Muslim tradition as an ancestor of the Arabs. Okay. And then we have in Christian tradition, we've got Arabs, or Abraham, it says, is described as a father in faith. Okay. So as we know, a lot of times when Christians do their preaching, they will bring up Abraham. They often talk about Abraham and Sarah, and even this the faith that Sarah had, or the faith that she had this child of the Israelite seed much later, was faith. So I mean, like, all of them talk about it. It's kind of like a sitcom, like just to be loose. Look at this loosely, but like it's like watching Power, and then out of Power you got offshoots. So you got Book 2 Power, Ghost, Raising Canaan, and Tommy's show. You know what I'm saying? All from an offshoot of the first Power. So what I'm saying is that we could look at Judaism or Abrahamic religion per se. Okay, what Abraham taught or what Abraham practiced, becoming an offshoot for Judaism, for Christianity, for Islam. Okay. So it says, in modern times, leaders from all three faiths have begun to interact and engage in constructive inter-religious dialogue. So all of them understand that they all are part of one group. It's like the ones who at the bottom don't see that. They don't be like, oh, a lot. This is really for a lot of Christians. Christians look at themselves as separate from Islam, as if they don't understand Islam at all. Which, Islam and like the Bible and the Quran have very a lot of similarities in the characters that are in that Bible and Quran. So, like, you look at like the prophet, peace be unto him. You have the prophet Muhammad, which they said the angel Gabriel came to him, and Gabriel is a Canaanite / Hebrew angel that talks to Abraham. You know what I mean? So you can see the cross reference there, and then the fact that they in Islam they often talk about how the prophet ascended and he saw Moses and he saw them. So he saw these Jewish people and the characters, and he associated himself with those. So it shows you how they really are combined and go together, right? So let's look at the expression, okay? It says the expression Abrahamic religions originates from the Quran, repeated reference to the religion of Abraham. Okay, so it gives you the source to look in. It says, in particular, this expression refers specifically to Islam and is sometimes contrasted to Judaism and Christianity. As for example, in Surah 135, they say, become Jews or Christians if ye would be guided to salvation. Say thou, nay, I would rather the religion of Abraham, the true and he joined not God with God, joined not gods with God. Okay, so in the Quran, Abraham is declared to have been a Muslim, not a Jew, nor a Christian. Okay, the later assertion is made on the basis that the Prophet Muhammad's divine revelation is considered to be a continuation of the previous prophet's revelation from God. Okay, so let's go on further. It says Adam, Noah, and Moses are all common to all three religions. So we also have some other characters. We have Adam and Eve. All three religions. If you ask them who the first people on the planet were, they're all gonna say Adam. They all believe in the Adam and Eve. The flood, Noah and the flood. And then, like we said, Moses, like we talked about the prophet, when he ascended or in a dream, or he saw Moses. All right. So they're also common with the three religions. As for why do not speak of Adamic or Noachian or Mosaic families, this may be the fear of confusion. Adam and Noah are said to be the ancestors of all humanity. Moses is clearly associated with Judaism, and through Judaism continuing into Christianity. So Moses is regarded as a prophet in Islam. But the term Mosaic may be implied in the genealogical lineage that the first Muslims, being Arab, did not share. Okay, that's speculation. Okay. But it says, thus, the scope suggested by the first two terms is larger than intended, while the third is too small. So, like you're saying, Moses is often attributed to, Moses is the prophet for the Israelites, or what you call the Jews, Judaism. It was the Mosaic law, the law of Moses, that the Jews practiced. So they looked at Moses as being their savior in a sense, because Moses is the one that saved them, allegedly in the storyline, saved them from the Pharaoh in Exodus. So I can understand why Moses would not be the term per se. Abraham is more vague. It goes back further. It is the origin of the religious people that we see today. Adam and Eve would be, and I think they would be second to look at. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get all into that, but I can see why we're using the term Abrahamic religion. Let's go. So let's look further. Okay, in the book of Genesis, Abraham is specifically instructed to leave Ur of Chaldees, so that God will make of you a great nation. Now, it's important for me to stop right here because Abraham was really a Babylonian, is what we call. Okay, Abraham originally was a Babylonian, so this is where the Babylonian or the Sumerian knowledge and understanding is part of Abrahamic religion, because the region that Abraham come from talks about like the Anunnaki, Anu, Marduk, Enki, and Enlil, and all those people. Really, Abraham came out of that system, so he brought that with him and settled in Canaan, which we'll get into, right? So it says that. So let's break it down. So he says that he had 8 sons by 3 wives. One Ishmael by his wife and servant Hagar. Okay, that was and then one by Isaac. Isaac was by Sarah, his one that is supposed to be, they look at as his main wife, I guess. And then it says, and 6 by another wife. So he has, now this, I'm not going to get too much into this part, but he had one by another wife, Keturah. Keturah has been known to be part of the Hindu religion. And I think I'll make mention of that as we get to speaking on this. But I just want you to understand that Keturah is the third wife. Many people didn't know that he had this third wife. Um, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, right? Baha'u'llah, and other prominent figures are all claimed to be descendants of Abraham. Okay? Jews see Abraham as the progenitor of the people of Israel through the descendants of Isaac and Jacob. Christians view Abraham as an important exemplar of faith and a spiritual as well physical ancestor of Jesus. Okay, so you see how they connected Jesus to Abraham. Then it says, in addition, Muslims refer to Sabaeans, okay, Christians, and I talk about Sabaeans on another video. So when we talk about, I got a video on Islam, you might want to check that out. It says, as one of the most important of many prophets sent by God. Thus, Abraham presents for some a point of commonality that they seek to emphasize by means of terminology. Okay. So let's look at a little bit more, and then I'm gonna hit these questions. For Jews, Abraham is primarily a reverend ancestor, a patriarch. Okay. For Christians, Abraham is a spiritual leader. And they call him in Islam Ibrahim. Is considered part of the line of prophets beginning with Adam. Okay. Monotheism. All three gods worship one God. Although the Jews and the Muslims sometimes criticize the common Christian doctrine of the Holy Trinity as polytheistic, which that is for another show. But it says, indeed, there exists among their followers a general understanding that they worship the same one God. So now Christians, let's just break it down. Christians believe in Yahweh. They believe in the same, Jewish God. You can see that by the name Jehovah. They call it Jehovah. Jehovah is a corrupt version of Yahweh. Okay. And Yahweh is supposed to be the God that the Jews finally started worshiping, right? So that's the commonality. The prophet tradition. All three recognize figures as prophets, though their lists differ, as do the interpretation of prophetic role. Now, let's go to this. Semitic origins. Judaism and Islam originated among Semitic people, namely Jews and Arabs. A lot of people, when we talk about Semites and Jews get to talking anti-Semitic, they act as if they are the only people that are Semites. Jews and Arabs are Semites. So if you say something anti-Semitic, it really is referring to also Arabs. Okay. So, respectively, while Christians arose out of Judaism, like we said, okay? The basis of divine revelation. No, hold on. Before I get in that, we want to look at the word Semitic. The word Semitic also goes back to like Babylonian. Babylonian, Persia, those places. So it's important because Abraham, he's called the first Semite, his origin is out of Babylon, the Ur of Chaldees, like we look, which is still, that's considered Semitic. So that's that Semitic connection. All right. So I'm not gonna get all into that. I'm gonna leave it up. So I want to tackle some of these. I really want to tackle a little bit of these right here, right? Let's look at what the anti-American saying. He's saying, of course, but this form is the only form where the saviors and imams were black, talked black, and wrote how proud they were to be Aswar black, but preach, brothers, seek knowledge even if it's in China. I definitely appreciate that. And I can agree, like a lot of, we understand that a lot of Islamic people in the world today are melanated people, meaning, even from African descent. A lot of Africans are Islamic, and we want to get into that tonight a little bit, about what, what people are saying. So let's go into this. So I'm going to look at, because what we're going to do now, since we've looked at what Abrahamic religions are and how they correlate, let's look at what's been going on with them. Because with these three religions, what we find is destruction behind a lot of them. All three of these religions have basically come into a region and made that region changed the region, changed the religion, the people, the indigenous culture has been changed. In some cases have been obliterated. So this is the connection. We're saying like these Abrahamic religions are the religions that are, for one, destroying the world today, right? And they are the primary reason why indigenous cultures do not practice their religion today. They don't practice their religions because of these three. Okay, we talk a lot of times about Christianity, and we know that Christians came into the area and did what they did. So let's look at this. Let's look at one of them. We're gonna look at Christianity. All right. Let's look at Christianity, because Christianity, has made a lot. They are a major reason why people are not practicing their indigenous original cultures, or even practicing anything close to it. It's because of Catholicism and Christianity. Christians came and destroyed their way of life. So let's look at it. Let's look at something. So let's look at right here. We're talking about the end of ancient Egyptian religion, a regional study of religious transformation. So the premise is, we know that Egypt, or what we call Kemet, was a vocal point of the world. A lot of people came to Egypt or Kemet to study. It was very progressive. Even under the Greco-Roman era, they thrived. There was the biggest library in the world. There were universities, and there was the Egyptian religious systems. Like, you had people following Ptah, or you had temples of Isis, temples of Heteru, which I call Hathor. All these different places, right? They thrived. And there was no issue, but until Christianity came. So let's look at this. Now, there's a book that they're reviewing. Let's look at the table of contents. So it's saying right here, let's just read what they're saying. The book under analysis here is a revised PhD dissertation of an author originally submitted in 2005, right? Talking about the religious encounters of the southern Egyptian frontier in late antiquity. Okay, so for readers, an Egyptologist by formation with a small background in Coptic studies. So, okay, this book is certainly a welcome contribution for it in its comprehensive analysis of the religious and social developments. Okay, and by formation. This book certainly welcomes the contribution. Okay, so the social developments at Philae and the First Cataract Zone. Okay, so the chronological boundaries are defined by the withdrawals of Egypt's southern border to Elephantine. Now, it's funny that we talked about Elephantine, because I just watched a video on that, and it was they said that the most concentrated Nubians in Egypt are found in Elephantine, what we call the Ansar region. Okay, but it says that in 298 A.D., Diocletian, listen, and the Arab conquest of Egypt. Within this scope, various sources are analyzed and comprehensively studied in order to give a picture of how Egyptians' religion and the new religion merged in daily life. So, for I'm not. This is a Greek. I know this is a Greek term, but philae or philae, one of the few established dates for the fate of Egyptian religion is in the year 537 CE. Okay, so we're talking about this is 200 years 200 years roughly after the Council of Nicaea, right? So you got Justinian. It said that he ordered. Oh my goodness, my mouse it says Justinian ordered the closure of the temples. Okay, and it says they offered two relevant texts. The first was a petition written by uh, Diodorus, okay, on behalf of the counselors against a man nicknamed the Eater of Raw Meat. The so-called Blemian incident, the accused man of blaming and neglecting the taught Christian doctrine and renewing pagan sanctuaries. Okay, with the help of the Blemmings. The second text talks about the Persian Wars, which states that the temple of Isis was finally closed following Emperor Justinian's order. Okay, so what happened with, like, let's say Egypt? Even I mean, and we're talking about in 537, right? So we're talking about after it's been conquered by Rome. Alexander came in there and had conquered it. It had been conquered by Persians. It had been conquered by, various different groups, Babylonians, and all them people, right? But it wasn't until Christianity that these temples actually closed. So what I'm seeing also is that when you look at the various conquerors in the world before that, those people didn't, when they conquered your land, they didn't force the people into believing their religion. So, for example, let's just use Greeks. When the Greeks under Alexander the Great, or the Greek, I say Alexander the Greek, him and Ptolemy, when they came into Egypt, they didn't destroy the culture. They didn't close the temples. They did nothing of that sort. What they did was, if anything, they combined their understanding with the understanding of Kemet or Egypt. Okay, what you'll find is the Greeks did it and the Romans did it. The Romans didn't. They didn't go into lands and conquer and take away the people's religion. I mean, you can see that with the Jews. I mean, like, the Jews were conquered, and the Romans built a temple for them. The Romans allowed the Jews to practice their religion. The only thing that the Romans wanted was, hey, I want that tax money, and I want you to acknowledge the emperor. Other than that, you can practice whatever you want. And in Rome, before Christianity, Rome had various religions. So back in antiquity and before, religion was not looked at the same way. And the people didn't conquer it. That's why, to me, it wasn't until Abrahamic religions. Until Abrahamic religions came, that's when you start seeing them take away and destroy and close down indigenous culture. I mean, we can see that with Christianity and slavery. I mean, they was like, you guys are heathens. We're going to convert you to Christianity. Now, I know there's an argument about Christianity. I'm not saying that Christianity wasn't in Africa before slavery. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the West Africans who practiced Islam, which came in there and made them Islamic, or they practiced their indigenous religion. When the Christians came in, they kind of looked at them as heathen. So, I want you to understand that. So we're looking right now, like I said, we're looking at the Catholics, the Christian Romans at this point, and how they started to close down and destroy things, right? It says that that the main thesis is that the negative picture of a rising Christianity fighting against the old religion is fundamentally erroneous. But it says that as the ancient Egyptian cults were already dying by themselves without external intervention. So, he's saying, and I get that, which I want to talk about too. A lot of times they're saying that the old way was dying, so they came in. But you definitely can see that there was a lot of destruction that had taken place among the Christians prior to this time and around this time. They started to destroy the things, right? I feel like if they were dying, then why shut them down? Why shut down the temples, right? So you guys do some more research on that, but I just want you to see that the fact that these things are happening, right? So let's look at let's keep going. Let's keep going. I want you to look at even with Africans and the extremism of Islam, especially extremism of Islam today, right? But let's look at this particular subject right here. Okay. This one right here is talking about the unbelievable damage the Islamic State has done to ancient sites in Iraq and Syria. Okay, so Syria and Iraq do have a lot of ancient Semitic, pre-Abrahamic, okay, pre-Abrahamic religious structures that still existed. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about when we look at Islam. It says, as the Islamic State continues its effort to create a caliphate, killing thousands in pain, blah blah. Okay, we know that's wrong, but I'm not getting to that. Okay, the militant group has destroyed numerous sites and have high historic and cultural value, and the destruction is never a coincidence. Okay, it says that these so-called extremists aren't only attacking the sites; they also have been quietly selling off small antiquities from Iraq and Syria, earning millions of dollars. Okay, so the jihadists' hatred and destruction of ancient artifacts, shrines, statues, and mosques, often recorded and then described or distributed on social media, have caused global outrage. So let's look at this: the Temple of Baal or Baal. So this is kind of like I said, the Temple of Baal is pre-Abraham. This is way before Abraham. So you got the Islamic State that took over, and many fear that this will signal the destruction of an archaeological treasure thousands of years old. Okay, so the satellite image released by the UN, the Temple of Baal, known as the city's most famous structure. The first century Temple of Baal lay at the heart of the complex ruins of Palmyra, one of Syria's most significant archaeological and tourist attractions. Weeks after the militants seized Mosul, okay, largest city in Iraq, northern city, the destruction of a tomb of the prophet Jonah was one of the first major atrocities against the historical site of the Islamic State. And it brought a new level of resentment. So, like you're seeing, like Nimrud, like they were destroying these ancient like it says, pre-Islamic cultural heritage. This famous, like these sites were discovered in the last century, were known as pre-Islamic cultural heritage. Okay. The second capital of the ancient city of Assyria, Nimrud, had built in 1250 AD and destroyed in 612 BC at its height, and it is the center of one of the most powerful states at the time, reaching through modern day Egypt, Turkey, and Iran. Okay. Militants used weapons to attack Hatra, the ancient fortress city of northern Iraq. Okay, so what I'm saying is this. We can see that Islam, and I'm not saying all of Islam, I'm not saying that everybody who is Islamic, because we know these are labeled as extremists, but it goes to show that this Abrahamic religion, okay, is taking on extremist views and destroying pagan sites. They have done this since they invaded Kemet, Egypt, which we'll look at. I think I got another clip on that. But what's happening is these people, these Abrahamic people, have come in. They came in through Islam in Africa and Christianity in Africa. They came in. They influenced and conquered the region. A lot of instances, they enslaved the people. Okay? So we must look at that. We got to look at that. The other thing is, when we look at, like, let's look at like Judaism, for example. Judaism is another side of it, because like Jews didn't really conquer a lot of land. They were given land. They were given the land of Canaan. And in Canaan, they took Canaan from the Canaanites. They came in, and eventually over time, they took over the religious beliefs and made the other people in that region inferior to their beliefs. And the Israelites became the dominant religious force in the region. Okay. They didn't necessarily go out and conquer, and conquer further out. But what they did was took over and basically made the people over time practice the Abrahamic religion, right? They started it, and then eventually they, Christianity comes and does the same thing, and Islam does the same thing, right? So let's look at this. Let's go into this. Let's keep going. Let's go into this. So I'm gonna look at this other one. If y'all look, please like the video, share the video. All right, so let's look at okay, one more clip on here. Well, I think I got another clip, but I wanted to break this one down too. This talks about Christianity, and it talks about the darkening age, the Christian destruction of the classical world, right? So this is more like what I'm saying. Like, we got one thing going, but hold on, y'all. Give me 1 second. All right. All right. All right. Y'all about to. I think my instinct was about to start a fire. You know what I'm saying? So okay, so let's get back into this, right? So what we got going on right here, it says the Christian destruction of the classical world. Vandalizing a Parthenon temple in Athens has been a tenacious tradition. Okay. It says, but that was hardly the first example. In the Byzantine era, when the temple had been turned into a church, two bishops carved their names on the monumental columns. The Ottomans used it as a gunpowder magazine. Okay, pockmarked masonry. So the Ottomans were Muslims. Okay, so we once again talking about the Muslims, having this issue. The results of the attack by Venetian forces in the 17th century. Now, Catherine, a classic teacher turned writer, takes us back onto these early desecrations. The destruction of the premier artworks in antiquity by Christian zealots, okay? Christian zealots. What we call the darkening age. We talk, like, another thing too, Christians, created the dark age. Christians destroyed all the knowledge, destroyed everything before them, and brought Christianity, brought Europe into a dark age. So, right there in that sense, right there is like they're showing you how Christianity would destroy previous pagan or religious viewpoints, right? So, I'm gonna go further down, right? Christian monks in silent order summoned up pagan texts from the library stores with a gagging hand gesture. The destruction of the extraordinary frankincense-heavy temple of Serapis in Alexandria is described as an empathetic deal. And the temple's gargantuan wooden statue of a god was dismembered before being burned. One pagan eyewitness remarkably flinty that the only ancient treasure left unlooted from the temple was the floor. Christians became known as those who move that which should not be moved. Okay? So you got to understand where we're coming from, okay? Let's fire. Y'all, excuse me one more time. One more year. Let's look at that real quick. All right. I think it's all right. All right. All right, let's do this. Let's get this back on. All right. So, okay, so let's look. Okay, it's saying that I want you to understand this right here. Let's look at this because I'm gonna tell you, like, the Christians were vicious, like Islam too, but the Christians had a lot to do with a lot of destruction of indigenous culture. And I don't even have time to get into this video, but when you look at, like, when the Spaniards, the conquistadors, came to America, they destroyed the religious systems of the Americas. They burned, looted, and destroyed all of their stuff. Okay, under the name of Christianity, under the name of looking at things as heathen. And so what you see is the Abrahamic faith look down on traditional religion. All of them look down on them. Even the Jew, like, Jewish people don't necessarily go out destroying a culture, but they call themselves the chosen ones. So in reference to, oh, they're chosen versus me. I'm not. I'm not chosen because I don't practice Yahweh. You know, the Christians are like, Jesus is the only person you can go through, and you have to go through us, which were the Catholics. So they had their one thing, and then you have Islam, who basically that the Prophet Muhammad, there is no one after him, and that he showed the way. And so many of them say, well, you must be Muslim. You this is the way. So don't you notice that about the three religions, that they tell you that this is the only way? Like, I don't hear that with other religions per se. I don't hear that when we discuss voodoo or voodoo, like this is the only way to salvation and God. There's a trend with Abrahamic religion. Abrahamic religion is all based faith. It's faith based as well. So that's something else to look at. All right. But okay, so let's continue more. So it's saying that if you enter the Parabellini, sometimes stretcher bearers, sometimes assassins who viciously flayed alive the brilliant Alexandrian mathematician, okay, and the pagan philosopher Hypatia. Now, if you guys don't know who these people are, like I said, Alexandria, which was named after Alexander, was one of the highlights in ancient Kemet, Egypt, at some point. They, like we said, they had built a huge library there. They had built the universities, and one of the head of the university was a Hypatia. She ran the university. Okay, so when now I don't know if I don't know if it's in this, but I'm just going to give you the story. I want to say around 500, somewhere in that time, 500 AD, or what they call CE. Somewhere around 500 years after Christ, allegedly, or so. The Christians stormed Alexandria, and they destroyed all the literature. They burnt the library down. It was the Christians that have been known to burn the library down. And the story goes that they attacked Hypatia, and they had the dogs tear her limb for limb. So she died very violently at the hands of Abrahamic Christians. Okay. So let's go into this. It says debate. Philosophically or physiologically makes us human, whereas dogma categorizes our potential as a species. Through the sharing of new ideas, the ancient identified the atom, measured the circumference of the earth, grasped the environmental benefits of vegetarianism. So, like, these things were all done, before, Abraham religions. And it says to be, or especially before Christianity, right? So it says to be sure, Christians would not have a monopoly or orthodoxy or indeed on suppression. The history of the world typically makes for stomach churning reading. Pagan philosophers, too, who flew in the face of religious consensus, risked persecution. Socrates, we must not forget, was condemned to death on a religious charge. But Christians did fetishize dogma. In AD 386, a law was passed declaring that those who contend about religion shall pay with their lives with blood. Books were systematically burned. The doctrinal opinions of one of the most celebrated early Christian fathers, okay, he of the golden mouth, were enthusiastically quoted in Nazi Germany 1,500 years later after his death. It says the synagogue is a den of robbers and of lodging for wild beasts, a dwelling of demons. Actions were extreme because paganism was considered not just a physiological, but a physical miasma. Christianity appeared on a planet that had been for at least 70,000 years animist. Okay, now I want y'all to understand that. It says Christianity appeared on the planet. Okay, it says appeared on a planet that had been for at least 70,000 years animist. Okay, asking the women and men of antiquity whether they believed in spirits. Nymphs, jinns would have been as odd as asking them whether they believed in the sea. So, before Christianity, pagan people, what do I mean by pagan people? I'm talking about people who weren't Christian. I'm talking about the indigenous people, the indigenous religious belief system was animist. For at least 70,000 years, they practiced animist. Do you know what animist is? They're talking about voodoo, voodoo, okay? The stuff that people scared of today, right? So they're telling you right here that before this time, before Christianity, the world was pagan. It was very animist. They believed in spirits. Okay? They believed in spirits. So let's dwell into that, man. This is my whole point. That the indigenous people were living and then Christianity and Islam, they come and they destroy the animist system on the planet. Christianity did it first. Okay. I know that Judaism had a part in it. When we look at Judaism's part, we have to look at the part that the Jews played in like the slave trade, these things of that nature, the part that they played in the money system, the part that they play in the viewpoint on how we look at the world today comes through Judaism, because it is Jewish people who are particularly over the entertainment industry, right? We know that the major movie industry, the entertainment, the major companies are Jewish, right? They portray a certain view on what we look at today. So, for years, when we think about religion on TV, it's going to be one of the Abrahamic religions, okay? Particularly Christianity, but it's going to be one of the three. You wouldn't find much outside of those three. And if they did, they're looked at as negative. So, for example, when we look at voodoo in Hollywood, it is considered satanic. Okay, so it's given a negative connotation. So because of Abrahamic concepts, they have made the entertainment, music, these two things, they have made those go against indigenous culture. They have created ideologies that really go against animist and indigenous cultures, right? So let's go further. It says that it would have been odd as asking them whether they believe in the sea. It says, but for Christians, the food that pagans produce, the bath water they washed in, their very breaths, were thought to be infected by demons. Polluted was said to make its way into the lungs of bystanders during animal sacrifice. And once Christianity became championed by Rome, one of the most militaristic, listen to the word, the most militaristic civilizations the world has known, philosophical discussions on the nature of good and evil became marital instructions for purges and what's this? Pugilism. Okay, so I'm not gonna get all into it. I'm looking for maybe some other aspects of it, but you can see that Christianity played a very important part in the destruction of indigenous cultures around the world. I mean, when the Europeans sailed around the world, when they began to colonialize, they brought their Abrahamic religion with them, and they conquered in that Abrahamic religion, thus making everyone Christian. And with the spread of Islam through conquer, because we know that Islam used a sword too. Let's look at, and then the fact that Islam began to be so rigid and that it only a certain type of Islam can be practiced today. So in the day's time, you got extremists practicing one particular type. And if you don't structure your Islam like this or anything outside of Islam is what, haram? Right? So, okay, let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's see who. Let's go into it. I want to look at what's the next comment? I noticed that the Europeans put a finger in it. Exactly. I mean, the Europeans definitely have a significant amount of things that they've done to destroy indigenous culture, right? And like I said, the main way that the Europeans used that, the main tool that Europeans used to destroy indigenous culture was Christianity. It was the main use, right? So let's look at this though. All right, so let's go back. Let's look at one more. Let's look at this because when we talk about Islam too, like Islam's, especially in this modern time, right? It says right here, Timbuktu's destruction. Why Islamists are wrecking Mali's cultural heritage. If anybody know, if any of us know, especially us African-centered people, we know that Timbuktu, is a very important part of West African history. Okay, prior to slave trade, Mali and Timbuktu, was under Islamic influence, but its importance to the world is especially to African history is very important, right? So let's look at how Islam even does, the culture, like Islamic look at African Islam as wrong. Okay. It says right here in a singular, defining act of barbarism, beamed out live for the world to see. In March 2001, Taliban fighters and grenades clustered around the famed giant statues of Buddha in Afghanistan's Bamiyan province, laid explosives to the feet and blew them up. The extremist shadowy figure lauded the destruction of the two towering 6th century monuments. Muslims should be proud of smashing idols. So this is, now I want to talk about this because that's the thing about it. Like the story of Islam and Muhammad, you know, he went on top of the rock, the Kaaba, and allegedly he smashed all the stuff, like, right? Because, you know, it's only one God. So he destroyed the indigenous way of life, right? By coming in and smashing all of their deities, but only leaving the one that remained, which was Allah. Allah existed in name, you know, prior to the Prophet Muhammad, but there were other, you know, what they call pagan deities that existed. And the Muslims, in the same way that the Christians destroyed, you know, they destroyed these things in the name of God. So Muslims should be proud of smashing idols. It was giving praise to God that we have destroyed them. Similar language and zeal was aired Monday when the news emerged from the Islamic factions of Mali, desecrating a number of tombs in the ancient city of Timbuktu, which are in recent months fell under the control of the separatist insurgency. The destruction is a divine order. You see what I'm saying? You see how they talk? It was divine order, said the spokesman. So they're not different than the Christians in that way. You know, I can't drive it home any further. That it's really Abrahamic religions that tend to think this way, right? It says that in a puritanical strain of Islam, okay, in the Taliban, right? Veneration of Sufi saints count as idolatry, a heretical practice that cannot be tolerated. You know, Sufis go back. Sufis are a very esoteric form of Islam. So, you know, when you talk about Sufism, even though it comes out of Islam, it does take on a lot of ideas from esoteric principles. Like, so it's not quite just Islamic, right? So they got to squash that out. So it's like anything that shows any relevance toward the ancient practices have to be destroyed. Okay. So listen to this though, because this is what I want you, because like we talk about, oh, well, the Muslims, that's what the Muslims are doing now. Okay. It says militants bearing guns, picks and shovels reduce the rubble the tomb of Sadi Maud, who died in 955 AD. They have also knocked down tombs of other prominent medieval saints. Okay. But beyond scolding the Islamicists, okay, there is little anyone can do to stop this wretched about iconicalism. History is littered with debris of toppled temples, smashed idols, right? Like I said, this ain't the first time that Muslims did this, right? I want to show something because I thought I had this, but I guess I don't. But I want to show. Um, Let me show you this. If I can spell today. Okay, I want y'all to look at this. Before that, like I said, if y'all want to hear, please like the video and subscribe. Right? I just want to mention this. Let's look at the Islamization of Egypt. Because Islam, okay, once again, when they came in, when the Arabs came into Egypt, it was already Christians in there, Coptic Christians. Okay, if anybody understands that Coptic Christianity, the Book of Thomas, those books that are not in the Bible, a lot of them are found in Egypt. So a lot of them are attributed to the Coptic Christianity. So let's look at the Arabs in the 7th century. Okay, seldom use the term Egyptos and use instead of the Arabic version, okay, al-Kibit, which adopted in English as Coptic. So I just want you to understand that. Religious life remained largely undisturbed following the established rule as evidence of the rich output of the Coptic Christian arts. Throughout, however, okay, conditions worsened, however, shortly after that. Okay, and in the 8th and 9th century, when Muslim rulers banned the use of the human forms of art, taking advantage of the iconoclastic conflict in the European ruled Byzantium, and consequently destroyed, listen, many Coptic Christian paintings, mainly of Jesus and fresno of, okay, so I got you, but let's go. I'm trying to find the one article that talked about the like it talked about Egypt. Like Egypt basically like at 900 AD, they the Arabics came in and destroyed the temples, right? So there was an article that did especially say that. So I'm trying to find that article real quick because I didn't. I don't. This is not necessarily what I'm looking for, but it might give me. This is not what I was looking for, but it might give me the name of the people. Basically, it's saying here that moreover, that 3 or more historians have witnessed the benevolent treatment of women in ancient Egypt, and the historians like blah 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 regarding smartness. We know now after Islam, right? So we know like Egypt was a certain way. Then after Islam, it says regarding women, no more female rulers have arisen to power. Says Islam. Islam did. Islam is Abrahamic, and Abrahamic religions kind of put women in second place. You got Paul doing that. You got Muslims doing that. The women are covered, and we know that was like that in Judaism. I can't find that one, but basically, when Islam after like 900 AD, when they went into the land, they started destroying the artifacts, and I really believe the only reason why they didn't destroy it all was because, like today, it's because it's bringing money in. But you got to think about it that before like 1900, maybe late 1800s, like the Sphinx was covered with sand. The pyramids was kind of still there, and they did their best. They stripped it down. They did all these things to it. They tried to blow it. They tried to blow through there to see if there was any treasures, things of that nature. So I mean, like, to me, Islam had no regard for ancient Egypt, right? So I can't find it right now. I think I don't know where it is, but basically Islam came into North Africa, conquered it, created a new religion. Now, I will say that when Islam came in, a lot of people embraced Islam. in some places, but in a lot of places, like in Eastern Africa, a lot of people were enslaved under Arabic Islam. So a lot of Africans was enslaved under that. And like I said, if you go to Africa today, you won't find a lot of indigenous culture like you used to. Like most of the people are, Muslim. So like the fact that these Abrahamic religions are in control of the world today, and the fact that how they control the way that we move religiously to now, you know, our people, are practicing Islamic, and even with Rastafarism. Like Rastafarism comes out of the Bible. Like a lot of the Bible, parables, they look at Jesus, they look at Moses, they look at all those different characters out the Bible, and they can, so Rastas look at the Bible as a means of religious belief. So it's like almost all of our religious beliefs are coming out of one of those three Abrahamic religions. Even now, like I didn't want to get into it all, but even when you talk about the Moorish Science Temple of America, the term, like we use the term Allah to describe God. In the Circle Seven Quran, there's often spoke of Jesus as going around the world teaching. We use these terms that come out of Abrahamic style. Like if you read in, like they talk about Adam and Eve, in the Circle Seven Quran, or the 101 lessons that Moorish Science Temple believe. A lot of the terms are familiar with Christians because, I want to say, like, it's not, and like I said, it's not a slight against anybody, but I understand that, like, you're trying to bring people out of darkness. So they use a lot of things they're familiar with. So I think a lot of what the Moorish Science Temple did was try to use some of these Abrahamic terms and characters and to bring you into it. But, it is definitely a lot of new age with the Moorish Science Temple. But they definitely are part of and infected, if you will, by Abrahamic religion. You know what I'm saying? So, that's really the best. That's really pretty much where I was going with this, y'all. Like I said, I'm just back again. I'm back on the scene. We gonna get into some more videos. Me and Brother King L Bay, we're gonna get into some more videos, dealing with all what we do on the Moore side, on the law side. And like I said, this is not to take away from the people. Like, there are some things that we could learn and take away from the oppressors' Abrahamic religion, but the fact that it has suppressed our vibration on the planet by not allowing us to practice our ancient culture has to be addressed. So I hope you guys take that into consideration when we're looking at religion. If you guys are opening up and learning more, take in consideration what you're learning and where is it coming from. So that's really all I got, to say on this. So with that being said, peace and love, and I'll see you on the next video. Tutanadi. Salam.